really inspire us to be better. And I love being around men because I've lived all of my life with men around me. I've got 4 younger brothers, and I've also been part of men's groups all of my life as a child growing up. And my father, my uncle, so I have been around men. The challenge is that sometimes we are around men, but we don't know how to talk to each other and don't know how to help each other. I think all of us know right now we can go online and find all the stats, as Apostle so eloquently told us, that we're in a crisis in our world. You name any issue or any era in this world, and yet there is an issue regarding men. In fact, 5 women can go right down Toronto and stand up there and just talk to each other for the whole hour without any police car passing. But if 5 men get together downtown or the Church Street or Young Street and just stand up there for a little bit and discussing anything and talking anything, a police car might pass, especially if you're black. No, I'm not going to the black issue, but there is a conscious reality in our world. And I believe it's come from a demonic atmosphere, and I believe it's played out in the physical world. I believe the absence of men is not because of society planned it. I believe in a spirit world. I believe that there is a force of darkness that wants to keep men out of their position, out of their relationships, out of their calling. And this has been from the beginning of time. This is not planned by a certain group of people. This is a principality that wants every one of us as men to not clearly come into the fullness of who we are. And so doing, we can turn the tide of any situation. So I just want to encourage you today. Let me just share with you one point to get us going here, because I'll be talking about self-awareness, self-esteem, and the power of integrity. And then we're going to begin to have some discussion, because I know we want to hear you. Apostle Gary is in the house, and I know he can answer most of your questions. But I can only pray and talk to us today. So in 1925, the U.S. Open, famed golfer Bobby Jones pulled a 1-iron out of his bag, addressed the ball, and as he set up to hit out the rough grass, his ball moved ever so slightly, a motion that calls for a stroke penalty. He was the only one who saw it, and yet he called the penalty on himself. The penalty eventually cost him the championship. When people tried to congratulate him on his sportsmanship, Jones replied, "That's like congratulating someone for not robbing a bank." It seems that whenever a man does something which is right, we want to applaud him like it's something strange. When we're supposed to be so naturally functioning in the way our Creator intended us. But it's a natural thing for us to step into the beach and say, just wait a minute, stop. Instead of what's going on national news, that a man actually came to the rescue. And so in the absence of us not robbing banks and being able to do what we're supposed to be and to do, the world has gone to do what it's going to do, because this world hates a vacuum. Wherever we don't stand in the gap, and that's the scripture, I make no apology, I first of all focus upon the biblical narrative. It is my boundary. It is my main reference. So when God looks for a man, he doesn't look for someone to stand there and sing some songs, but you are called to stand in the gap. But if we don't know what that looks like, if we were not trained that way, if we have nobody that stands in the gap, and when they are leaving the gap, they hand it over to you and I, what should we do but look around our world, study, research, use our intellect? Grandma, granddad, society will mold you into a world that suits their purpose. Because when you and I stand up as men, the world has to have an attention towards you. Because my biblical understanding is that men of integrity and value challenge the honesty, the integrity of our society. And when they do that, they put the darkness to fright, because light comes. You need to understand that the powerful world is waiting for you and I at this moment to come to our own and stand up. See, I wasn't taught this, but I grew up inside church. I was a Christian before I really was a Christian. Because my father said to the 5 boys, I'm going to church, make sure you get there before me. So I grew up with the same kind of man he's talking about. Men who, I don't know if they were strong or what, but I did know that when I came from school in the evening and my mother couldn't handle the fire, rumbustious young men who were very active, and we ate and we did everything possible around the atmosphere, or not just around the atmosphere. All she said that it's 4:30. I'm tired to talk to you. Wait till your father come. That's one statement. I thought it was the 11th commandment. Because when she spoke it, there was a chill in the back of all of us. And we knew my father drove a Ford pickup van, and we could know the engine sound half a mile away when he turned the corner. And something about the man coming into the atmosphere. Now, he wasn't the most educated. He wasn't the man that you would say went to university and sat down and have discussion with us. But he knew one thing, that his sons are not going to be violent men. They will not be on the streets. They were going to go to church and they would get an education. He never had none. His father was a minister, would travel the nation, preaching the gospel, but didn't take care of his son. My grandfather had several sons, 5 sons, and yet all of them now in the church and doing their thing. But the firstborn son didn't get education because the father was pursuing his mission. He has sons, 5 sons. And here I am here today saying to you that unless we find our purpose, we will not be able to be truly the men that God called us to be. And so if we are going to be like Bobby Jones, doing the right thing, even when nobody is speaking to you, it has to come from the inside of you. And it cannot be controlled by your color or your history. It has to be controlled by the fact that you have found a relationship with the creator of the universe. Your eyes are open to the fact that God created you man. Because he created man and he created woman. And every one of you in here, I actually question, if you're created man, then God has a purpose for the man inside of me and the man inside of you. And we might not have known anybody that really reflected it, but I encourage you and I challenge you today, is that God will always provide for you an example of himself in some man. If you are determined to be what God intended you to be, God is purposefully going to make somebody. But the challenge for all of us men is to be able to see that man and be able to make a difference in our own minds to reach towards that man. I had the awesome privilege to be walking with not only my father, but also my pastors, my elders. I always had elder men in our fellowship. And I also had young men around me. And I also had young men that are younger than me. You understand the 3 dimensions of a man's life is that he must have a man that is gone before him, that supersedes his intellect and his reasoning. It's called experience. And your intellect will never defeat a man who is experienced in all of what you have walked through. It cannot defeat him. I've been there and I've tried it. In all of my education, and I have studied and I'm still studying, you cannot overcome him, because every step you make, he has made it before you 5 times and have failed before your intellect even comes into the bay. You cannot defeat him. And I've tried. And others have tried better than me. And so an intellect is no match for a man who has experienced all your intellect and still come out. So I need to have that man in my life and make a difference. There's also going to be a man in your life right now that is so close to you, that will challenge you. He will argue with you. He's like a brother to you. He will disturb your equilibrium, but he's only really there for you to get better. And there is also another man that's supposed to be younger than you, that he's coming up and doesn't know much. But everything that you say, he believes. Everything that you say, he thinks it's the right thing. And if we don't have these men around us, then all we're depending upon is what we study, what we research, what we know. It's a dangerous place to live. Because when you live that way, you begin now to think you are the universe. And your children and your family. It's a dangerous place, and I don't want to be there. So let me just share with you a few thoughts, because I said that I will not be too long. If you're going to be the man that God intends us to be, we must root ourselves in a strong self-awareness. Self-awareness means you need to know the kind of person you really are. Not the kind of person you like to be. Because I really would like to be 6'4". I'm telling you right now, all of my life. And I wanted to be of those broad shoulders. Thank you. Oh, my book is here. I need to share with that. I wanted to be 6'4". Anybody wanted, when your child growing up, you saw an image of somebody that really wasn't you, but you really knew that you want to be the best you. The problem is that in the midst of praying to be God's best image, you wanted to be something that is really not you. I really wanted to sing like some great singers, I said. And I will sing, but I do not carry the note for my life. I just want you to know. But it's okay. And that's the problem with so many men. We know so much without somebody else speaking to you and says, you might think that's you, but that's not you. It's really not you. And we spend the rest of our lives avoiding people that can help you in your own self-awareness. We want a wife that can really boost you up, but not a loving woman who says, honey, I appreciate you, but you cannot sell those cars for your life. But I feel I can do that. You need to be aware, and nothing helps you more self-aware than honest, loving people that are aware of you. And so we need to have those kind of people. Now let me define self-awareness, because it's not how you feel. It's the desire to overcome areas of weakness in order to bring your life to another level. If I am aware of my condition, when I have a desire to get better, because I recognize, if you're an alcoholic, if you're struggling with sexual addictions, and I understand sexual addiction because I counsel that. I talk to people. I, as a young man, went through all the sexual issues. I was talking to the young man a couple of years ago now. He's about 17. He comes to me and says to me, Pastor, I have a sexual problem. As if all men don't have one. But I'm listening to him. Because I'm older than him. I was about 35, 40. And he's coming to me at 17 years old. I have a sexual issue. And in the back of my mind says, really, which one of men doesn't have a sexual issue? But I listen to him because he thinks he's going to bring something that most of us don't struggle with at the night and the day. I'm married. Have a good sexual relationship. But I still have sexual issues. No, I know it's getting very quiet in the room. But if you are aware of these things and you're seeking help, you're able to honestly recognize that I have issues that I need help with. It's the beginning of change in my awareness. If Samson in the Bible will understand that he could break chains, do great things, but when it comes to his sexual control and his boundaries, he was the weakest man you can ever believe. And once a man is weak, he is exposed. No matter how strong you are in other areas, and I've walked to the fact that if you're weak with alcohol, if your head hurts you and you need to get a drug, some medication, if you have to drink, smoke, whatever, if it's sex, whatever, some just have to stay on the internet and do all kinds of things, whatever it is. Whatever it is that weakens your mental resolve, you need to be self-aware. Because no matter what others tell you, a man doesn't change until when he really wants to. And he's come to the bottom of the bottom of the bottom. When he's lost everything, that's the time. So we will talk. And I talk to men and say, yeah, I got this covered. I got this covered. I got this covered. And back to that 17-year-old young man, he said to me, I've got a problem. He says, really? I said, what do you do? He says, well, I go to school. I says, what kind of struggle? He said, I'm struggling at night. I'm thinking about just sexual things all the time. And I'm saying, really? Most of us do. I didn't tell him that. I'm just saying that it's going through. I mean, talking to somebody sometimes and you know what they're saying, but in the back of your mind, I said, what's he saying that I don't understand? Then I said, so what are you reading? This is before internet exploded. Well, I said, come on, talk to me now. He said, I read magazines. So what kind of magazines? Well, I got some magazines. I said, where are they? Under his bed. Those were the days when people didn't have any CDs, cassettes, and tapes. They had magazines under their bed. And he would read these magazines with naked women inside them in all kinds of posture. And he's reading these things every day and talking to himself and go to bed at nighttime because your mind is the most powerful weapon in your body. I can have sexual desires inside my brain and my body responds to it. Without me even touching a woman or a man or whatever it is. You can have it there because the chemicals in your brain release without you actually having a physical encounter. You could be driving a car without driving it. You could be living in, that's the way you can go. Your brain is so powerful that it can release the chemicals that you will normally have when you're in a physical act. You can fight a man inside your dreams and have the adrenaline pumping and kicking and fighting, and you never touch somebody because of the power of the mind. And so when we get these images there, unless we are aware of that, we are not going to be able to shut the door to our weaknesses. And we become men who are constantly strong in one area, but we can't expose that. And I don't have time to go through the story. History is filled with great men that literally were incredible when they're speakers and financially, but people who knew them in their weakness knew the key to their lives. And I made a decision in my own life. Every man that is strong has the ability to overcome forces that are constantly pressing on you. And if you don't have any forces pressing on you as a man, then maybe you're not called to this world. Because if you're called to this world, God will always create an atmosphere that you have power to overcome. But you have to overcome your weaknesses. So we talk about self-esteem. I talk about self-awareness, self-esteem. Self-esteem is realizing that you are not competing with other men. Now, I don't know about you, but even as a child growing up in my high school days, again, I said I wasn't the biggest child. I went to a technical school. For those of you in the Caribbean know a technical school. So I learned trade. I learned how to do engineering. I went on to university and I became an engineer before I got into what I was really called as a man to be. Because I went to things which I liked, not the things we were called to be. And most of us men are going to the places where we don't have much struggle. If you try something twice and it doesn't work, men say, don't laugh at me. This is not me. So men need to go to those places. But there are places you're called to do. But if you press through, you'll come into your fullness. But for most of us men, if it doesn't work the first couple of times, especially if someone's laughing at you around you and saying to you, oh, you're no good. I don't like the laughter. I don't like the criticism. I don't like it because I had very low self-esteem. And unless your self-esteem is come up, you will not become the kind of man God wants you to be. So I went to high school, and the girls went to the other guys, and not to me. My father was strong, determined to keep me. He would tell me what time to reach home in the evening. He took the bus with me in the morning to go to high school, and then timed the bus, and so you make sure you get the first bus home. And so he was watching everything, and never had a chance to interact with things. I played soccer. And if there was a fight on the field, my father was on the field instantly to fight for me. I need a chance to get into a fight myself. I wanted to do it. My father said, hold on, don't do that. So I lived in that kind of atmosphere where everybody saw, here comes his father, here comes his father. And I wasn't able to advance anything for my own. But I went to college in the same situation. I had to learn outside of the shadow of the man that I walk with. Sometimes, men, we need to come out of the shadow of the people that we are living our lives on their self-esteem. And their self-esteem has picked you up until when you have to be put down on your own feet. Maybe it's grandma, maybe it's mommy, maybe it's granddad. Somebody in your life that based upon their self-esteem, they lifted you up. The problem is that when you have to face life, you face life remembering their words instead of remembering the words God gave you. If you're listening to their words all the time, maybe there is no word in you. That as a man, God meets you in the garden like he did Adam. I want to be in that meeting, Pastor, when every evening God meets Adam and says, how's your day? Did you overcome that situation? Did you speak to it? Did you? Because it's all out there, but you're the man. You're my son. Come on, you can do this. So a word from the Father in your mind is greater than any word that comes from those who will raise you up because you're living off their self-esteem. There comes a time when I had to begin to walk in the self-esteem and the identity that I am. I'm a son of God. I identify my life beyond just my race, my color, my sex, my background. All of that stuff is irrelevant to strong men. Strong men do not depend upon these things. Strong men stand up in the atmosphere, recognize that I'm here because of the grace and the mercy of God. And they become men who understand themselves. They don't have to beat someone down to rise up. You don't have to criticize somebody. If somebody doesn't have your intellect and doesn't understand what you're doing, you don't have to win him in the battle or win him in your strength. Strong men don't need that. If the woman is there, you don't have to fight with her and quarrel with her. I love strong women because they understand, but I'm not competing with you because you'll never be me. And you'll never be able to compete with me. So I don't have to fight and quarrel with you because I am me. See, I walk into my home as a man with self-esteem. I sit down, I'm the father, and I will always be the father. So my children don't hear my voice. They hear their mother's voice. And I will say to my children, don't let me raise my voice. Because if your mother raises her voice, I come in. Because her voice is the voice you hear. And behind her voice is me. And they know that she doesn't threaten them with the father is coming. But if she raises her voice, therefore you're not honoring her. And honor for me and my family was huge. So I come home and I sit down quietly, and my son is in the house. He will tell you, we don't have any discussion, no quarreling. Because when I come into the house, my first question is that, did your mother have to speak to you guys too strongly? No, Daddy, then we're good. Because if we're not good, I take them outside and I begin to have a very strong conversation with them. I begin to speak to them from who they are. Build your children and those around you self-esteem. You cannot build somebody's self-esteem if yours is not intact. If I am not confident, I build him up because I don't need to compete with him. Because he's doing the good him. And I love him being him. And I love him being me. We need these kind of men. And I believe you're in the room. I need you. We need you in a society that is burning down. Just go on the internet. There are crises all over. A police officer stops you. You don't have to go into a contest. It's against the law. No, officer. I respect the authority. Even if he's out of order, I will stay in order. Because my self-esteem is not based upon how he talks to me. My self-esteem doesn't come from him. It comes from my Creator, my Abba, my strength. And that's what made the apostles them so awesome. They were beaten and placed in prison, and they were common men. Not educated, common men, laboring people, but they carried themselves like they were in interaction with a greater spirit, which is Christ in us, as we said today. And so our integrity, let me just leave a few thoughts concerning integrity with you today, because we do need people of integrity. I want you to give you a definition of integrity: the quality of being honest and having, sorry for this, I am not an expert on these things. The quality of being honest and having strong moral principle and moral uprightness. That is integrity. If I say to men, do people call you a person of integrity? In a world where integrity is such a hard thing to find. As somebody in church, I was amazed as a young minister, just getting my first pastorship, starting out young. I thought integrity dwelled in the church. Now, I can't speak outside the body, but I believe in the body of Christ, that we as men must be men of integrity. A quality of being honest and having strong moral principles. In other words, men must and people must know this is what he says and this is what he believes, and he's not changing for the whole world. I'm not evolving. Christ is not evolving as our culture evolves. Christ is still Christ. We need men that when you meet them, this is them. This is them now. This is them tomorrow. Their children know. Their wife know. Their community knows. If he says, I'll meet you tomorrow at 4:30 under the clock, you understand that he will be there unless something really drastically happens to him. He doesn't speak without declaring what's going to happen next. I grew up with those kind of men that they shook your hand and that's all you need from them. I grew up with those kind of men that they said to you, take this and I'll come back. Their word was everything. We need you. We need to become strong men again, because our strength is based upon the power of our commitment to what we say. It's not the books we write. I wrote this book. I've got 2 now. I've got another one coming out. Maintain your atmosphere. I said, Lord, it's just a short book. But he talks about maintaining my atmosphere. Because God gave a man men to maintain the atmosphere, not women. He put the man in the garden that God created. And then he said to man, maintain the garden. He gave him instructions what to do. take the tree, maintain the tree, but don't eat of one tree. Simple facts. So, men, we need to know how to maintain the atmosphere. My first atmosphere is me. Well, she made me do that. I've got issues. For how long, man, are we going to continue walking on with our issues? 20 years, 30 years? We must come to a time when we help others with issues. And that's my cry. I'm coming here tonight to help, to say I'm getting healed and delivered from my issues. I could tell you, I stood there. I'm closing now, my brother. Yet my father died 30 years ago with 4 young brothers and a mother. And I'm standing up after the grave, at the graveyard, with 4 younger brothers. And all my uncles and aunts had left us, the church people. And I'm standing there saying, Lord, what do I do next? I had these crying younger brothers and a mother that was absolutely beside herself. And that's the time when the shadow of a strong man left me. And guess what? I spent about 5-10 years crying for a father. And God says, stop crying and be the thing that you're crying for. I want to leave with you men today. Instead of us crying for a different world, be the one that God can use to change the world. So I started by making sure that I changed my attitude. And I wrote this from a life of changing my atmosphere. Because every time you want to move in life, man, there's something around your atmosphere is going to tell you, what are you trying to do? Then I will change it. I change on the inside of me. And so tonight, we're closing. I'd love to hear from you all. So I'm stopped. There's so much more I could say to you. But your self-esteem, your self-awareness, your integrity cannot be given for anything. The faith we live by are based up by men who will put everything on the line. And because of that, I've walked with that man beside me. He's got his children, his wife, his business. So I didn't come here to talk to you about my ability to counsel. I'm saying to you, he's there. And you will ask his questions. Ask him, because he's standing there as an example of what it is to be a man. And as far as I'm concerned, he's a man in his full sense to deal with this world. Thank you for your time. And I hope I've not stretched you too much.